Hey there troops, it's me, TheTacticalBrit, and we've recently had the first update that we've seen in Battlefield in 2019, and this is of course in the lead up to Lightning Strikes, which releases on the 17th of January, but more importantly makes some changes to the game that I think are worth talking about, now that I've got some time to dig on in and see what's cracking. So first off, I think it's pretty important, these dev patches are pretty slow coming out of Christmas. Naturally everybody's getting back to work. Things need polishing, and in a video game development environment, you really have a long stage of processes. You've got to make a patch, you've got to, QA the patch, you've got to make sure everything's working functionally, you've got to make sure you don't make any more new bugs as well. So naturally, the update took a while, but that's okay, and there's expected to be a few more over the duration of Lightning Strikes, which will fix things like some of the vaulting issues we've seen, it will fix things like bipodding, and that will happen in the next month or so. We're at a point now with Battlefield where we can really expect regular updates, but in this particular patch I want to go over a few things that they've changed, things I like, things I don't like. On the whole I think it's very positive. I think we've noticed some pretty good changes, or at least some pushes towards the right directions, but there have been some things that are broken sadly, and some things that are a little bit janky and a little bit jarring, but I think it's something that can be worked on quite easily. So to start off with, things that are good. One thing I really liked was the damage indicator. That is definitely much more accurate now. I'm really getting a better idea of where I'm being shot at. Previously, if you hadn't played Battlefield 5 prior to this patch, or you weren't exactly noticeable of it, the damage indicator would often get the damage direction wrong. You'd be shot from the right and it would appear on the left. It'd be very confusing, and it would often lead to you getting killed quite frequently. I'm really happy to see that change, and I think it's something that will definitely improve some of the time to death experiences, and more importantly give players an opportunity to react to what exactly is happening around them. The next thing for me, and I think this is a really important one, is footsteps. That's definitely seen an improvement. I don't think it's entirely perfect just yet, but it definitely has seen an improvement. Footsteps seem to be much louder and much clearer now, which is very important of course, but I think the directional kind of vibe of the footsteps still needs a bit of work, especially when you start reaching interior areas such as buildings. And some of the footage today I was on Rotterdam and I was just running around with the staircases, and even when I was stood dead still there was just so many footsteps you couldn't pinpoint the direction because it was echoing all around the building. You couldn't say whether they were above or below you. And I think we really need some more distinct sounds in that kind of category to really try and get the ball moving on that. Another small fix, which is kind of mentioned in the patch notes that I noticed, but I don't think a lot of people will, is that they've actually improved how consistent tracers appear from enemy players. So previously in Battlefield 5, when somebody would open fire on you, it was actually kind of difficult in some respects to tell where the tracers were coming from because they weren't inherently clear, or there would be some kind of deviation from where they actually originated from. Now it definitely does come consistently from the shooter, and that is now something much clearer to somebody who is being shot at. So what else have they changed? Well, one big one that I think a lot of people have noticed and talked about is the new kill cam experience. Now, kill cams have always been in Battlefield, more or less, to some degree. I don't really have any huge complaints with them, but this one's a little bit janky and it feels kinda... The word I'm looking for here is half-assed. Like, it feels like they just sort of went, this kind of will work, slap it into the game. And, I think it's a good idea. I think it definitely needs a little bit of work. For example, the HUD being delayed isn't something I entirely agree with. I think although it zooms into the players, it doesn't actually really give you a good idea of what's happened. I like the zoom in because it does let you know, hey, it was that guy over there who was shooting at you who definitely killed you. But at the moment it's quite janky, quite jarring. It makes the death experience better to some degree, but it makes it aesthetically significantly worse, I think. And I think a damage log as well, like we've seen numerous examples from, would definitely be much better and much more appreciated from players than something like the janky kind of camera we're seeing right now. Another really big and noticeable difference is the way we interact with terrain around us, and this has been a significantly big improvement from what we've seen previously. One of the most frustrating things in Battlefield, I'd probably say in Battlefield 1 and 5, is literally just, when you're trying to move around terrain, when you just get caught and snagged on things, or sometimes you have to vault, even though you clearly shouldn't have to. That's been completely fixed more or less now. Especially on some of the steeper terrain, you don't have to spam vault anymore. You can actually just relatively smoothly run up the hill, which is a nice change of pace. I think it was one of the most infuriating things, especially when you get caught in an engagement with somebody, you get snagged on some tiny rock that it definitely looks as though you should be able to get over, but for some reason can't. That's now completely gone. I've also noticed a significantly less decrease in being forced to stand up. Sometimes I think when you lay down on some of these terrains, the game would kind of force you to stand because it's like, oh no, you can't interact with it that way. There's been a lot less of that so far, so you can actually sort of lay down in some of this, you know, janky terrain a little bit more to try and use the cover more effectively, which I think is definitely a bonus. One big thing that they've actually managed to break in the patch is the respawn timer. I think this is something that will probably be a quick fix, but if you're a medic now looking at enemy players who have been downed, sadly at the moment you won't actually be able to tell when they will run out of time to revive. It's incredibly frustrating, and it's another thing that the medic class just simply really didn't need. Another thing we've seen as well as some balanced passes. Minimum damage of the Gewehr 43 and Cell Blaster 1916, for example, have been reduced. It was previously 35, it's now dropped down to around 33.5, which is a minor difference, but it will make a difference. I'm certain there's lots of data and telemetry that are giving them these ideas. We've also seen things like the bombers have some of their reload times reduced from 30 seconds to around 20 seconds, which makes sense because I previously believed that the previous reload time of 30 was just far too long, and it kind of made the bombers useless in some respects, in my opinion. So it's good to see some of that change too. So definitely some improvements, definitely some things that still need fixing, but I feel like we're on the right track. I feel like we're making pushes towards the right objectives and the right goals, and I think this patch has been a nice and welcome change. As always, troops, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again soon in another video.